In 1979, we're introduced to a Ridley Scott film that's written by Dan O'Bannon about a crew on a commercial space tug called the Nostromo. The crew encounters an aggressive and deadly extraterrestrial that's set loose in the ship. That franchise-starting film was called Alien. It stars Tom Skerritt, Sigourney Weaver, Veronica Cartwright, Harry Dean Stanton, John Hurt, Ian Holm, and Yaphet Kotto. Its premiere was in May of 1979 at the Seattle International Film Festival, and its midnight release was shown in 70mm. June 22nd was when it was released to most theaters in the U.S. The success of this film spawned a media franchise of films, novels, comic books, video games, and toys. It also launched Sigourney Weaver's acting career, moving her from this first lead role to a superstar. This movie is one of the first films to reveal the true terrors of space travel, where there is no one that can hear you scream. It gave us some new spine-tingling special effects and a revolutionary heroine, that being Ellen Ripley, played by Sigourney Weaver. She was, without a doubt, this alien's worst nightmare and a worthy adversary. But she almost didn't make it into the film and could have very easily been a man instead. The writers, when they originally wrote the entire cast, they were all men, but they left a note in the screenplay that the crew really could be unisex, and all parts that were played could be interchangeable, men for women. O'Bannon and Shusett, when they wrote the screenplay, never dreamed of the lead being a woman. The producers of the film are the ones that made that call, believing that a female Ripley would be more unique and possibly more likable to the ones that were bankrolling the film. They just thought that they would score a lot of points if they turned that character into a woman. The movie was originally called Star Beast. Somehow that just doesn't seem to fit and doesn't have the same appeal as Alien. When Dan O'Bannon was drafting the screenplay that would go on to become Alien, he originally had it in his mind to use this unusual title of Star Beast. He didn't like it, but he struggled to find a better replacement until late one night he was having a writing session, and as he was typing the dialogue in which the crew members discuss the alien, that word jumped out to him. He immediately ditched the Star Beast title for a much simpler title. He loved it because it was a noun and an adjective. Initially, this movie was not an easy sell. The writers who co-wrote the story bounced between producers for a while and almost landed a deal with B-movie legend Roger Corman. But then eventually the script made its way to a new company called Brandywine Productions, which had close ties to 20th Century Fox. Brandywine asked for all sorts of rewrites for the movie, but the studios still were just not very interested in it. When the movie Star Wars hit the theaters and took over as a box office sensation, every studio in Hollywood rushed to get anything remotely sci-fi into production. So this is how Alien got the green light to get started. All of the aliens in the movie, the facehugger, the chestbuster, the humanoid space jockey, and the big bad adult, were designed by the surrealist painter H.R. Giger. The writers handpicked him for Alien. They had first met the artist while they were in Paris working on another film. It really stood out to O'Bannon that he produced some really sinister images that created a certain demeanor. At one time, the Dutch custom officials stopped the artist because they thought his paintings were photographs, and they were deeply disturbed by him. The character of Ash wasn't in the original script, he being the secretly android member of the crew, played by Ian Holm. He was invented by the producers, but the writers were kind of split on what they thought about this character. Shusett loved the idea, and O'Bannon wasn't too sold on the character. He just didn't think it made a whole lot of change in the final outcome of the movie. The name of the ship comes from a Joseph Conrad novel. All the horrors that happen unfold on the spaceship Nostromo. This name was taken from the title of a 1904 novel which follows an Italian explorer sent to South America to plunder a silver mine. Shooting the film was pretty tough on the actors that played these roles. The spacesuits tended to get really hot inside. Add in set lighting and it being a summertime production schedule, and you've got some really sweltering conditions that occur on the set. Veronica Cartwright, who played Lambert, has stated that many of the actors were fainting on a regular basis, so much so that they had to bring in a nurse and have her on standby with oxygen tanks. Still, the production didn't do anything to try to remedy the problem. They finally got forced into modifying these costumes. They used a 6'10" Nigerian student to play the lead alien. Balaji Badio wore the famous alien suit, but he didn't get the part through traditional casting calls. He happened to be in a pub in London where he had moved to study graphic arts when a casting agent spotted him and immediately called the alien producer, Ivor Powell. Powell and the director had been struggling to find someone to fit into this praying mantis type costume. They needed someone really tall but lanky, and Badio was the guy. He ended up taking some mime classes to get the alien's motions down, and during production, in between takes, he had to sit in a custom swing that was built because the tail he had wouldn't allow him to sit in a normal chair. The egg that's shown in the movie that housed the alien required an enormous amount of hydraulics, hand shadows, and the use of cow tripe. Most directors make their cameos in their films via a walk-on bit part, not by making shadow puppets. But Ridley Scott's appearance in the film comes when an alien facehugger appears to move inside its egg. This was really just the director Scott flicking his gloved hand under the moving light. The egg also came outfitted with steel hydraulics along the top, and when it opened up, those were cow intestines, not alien parts that were nestled inside it. Now, in the fourth act of the film, the director stripped the Ripley character down. Sigourney Weaver, in this part as a strong, capable, and very attractive woman, and he wanted to increase the sense of her peril by showing her undressed, where Ripley does a modest strip down to just her underwear. This scene made this tough lady seem much more vulnerable, but also raised her sex appeal tremendously. We immediately see a different side of Ripley. Now, it's said that the intentions behind this strip wasn't all about sex, but you have to believe that's probably the motivating factor. But the real truth, she was sweaty, blood-covered, and a complete mess from all the chaos that had gone on earlier. And before she goes into a hypersleep, she needed to make herself more comfortable. She just wants to take her clothes off and have a bath and relax and think it's all over. Then suddenly, the worst possible thing happens. She's not prepared and is completely vulnerable in this setting. She got a lot of criticism for this scene, and so did the director. They asked her, how could you demean yourself by doing this striptease? Her response was, are you kidding? After 5 days of blood and guts and fear and sweat and urine, don't you think Ripley would take her clothes off? It never occurred to her for a second that people would view her strip scene as exploitive. But she did think that scene was provocative. And yes, it was. This was the talk around the water cooler for days and days after this film came out. And it really did turn Sigourney Weaver into a sex symbol. Take the time to go back and watch this classic film from Ridley Scott again. You'll see some really good performances from some very capable actors. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.